What is up? So Ableton 11 is finally out, and you're probably wondering, is it worth all the hype? What are the new features? So in this video, I'm gonna go through all the new features in a rapid fire succession so that you can understand what Ableton 11 is all about. Let's do this. Hey yo, it's Alex from EDITNG Music, and with this channel, it's my mission to help musicians produce themselves by developing their mindset, expanding their creativity, and connecting to their inner artist in a deeper way. This video is sponsored by Pure Caffeine from an organic energy drink. All right, so Ableton Live 11, I'm super excited for this update, and I wanted to do a quick overview of all the new features you will see in Ableton Live 11 in kind of rapid fire succession. So let's get started. All right, so Ableton Live 11 now has comping, so we can kind of collage together multiple audio performances or MIDI performances to get the ultimate master take. All right, so I have a comp right here of my electric guitar, and this is actually a comp of multiple takes that I took going over this loop with my guitar. So all you have to do to start comping is basically punch in, so just record over something that you've already recorded, and it will automatically generate take lanes. And the way you can see take lanes is to just right click on the audio track and click show take lanes right here. And then you'll notice that all of these take lanes kind of appear. So with these take lanes open, you can click on your various takes and you can actually audition all of your different takes very easily. I'm just gonna solo this for now. And you can simply just click on the take you wanna audition and hit T, and then you can listen through to it. So let's say I wanted this beginning part in my master take. All I would have to do is simply select the region I want and hit enter to send it to the top. And you'll notice the top take updated itself. I'm just gonna undo because that's not actually the one I wanted. Alternatively, you can also hit the draw tool or press B to turn the draw tool on, and you can just highlight the sections that you want and it will automatically update at the top. All right, so I've got a little bit of this take, a few chunks down here and a chunk here, and once you're done editing your comp, you can simply just right click and then click show take lanes again, and then they will hide themselves. So this is what it all sounds like put together. So beyond doing comp edits with audio that you've recorded, you can also do this creatively with pre-recorded loops or samples. So I've done this with a few drum samples here. So I'll just open the take lanes for this, and you'll notice that I have various drum loops that I've stacked one over the other. And I've basically just creatively decided to match these together to make this kind of collage of a drum beat. And if I just wanted a different area of a beat, I could just audition it, press T. Let's say I just wanted this little part, just highlight it, hit enter, and then it's updated at the top. You can actually also comp multiple MIDI takes together like I've done for this track. So I'm just going to solo this. There's a little bit of an abstract thing going on, but I've comped together many just improv performances, one on top of the other. And it's a really easy way to start getting really good loops and tracks just by combining multiple different improv takes one after the other. That's what it sounds like. All right, the next big feature is what is called linked editing, and you can do this by simply grouping multiple tracks together, right-clicking, and hit link tracks. And now these tracks are linked together, and whatever I do on one of these tracks will be done on all of these tracks. So that's super handy for editing or getting creative, right? Super easy to make really quick edits across multiple tracks at the same time. And to unlink tracks, simply just right click on the group you've created and hit unlink tracks, and then they'll be back to normal. All right, so the next big feature is MPE compatibility. And what is MPE? Well, that stands for MIDI polyphonic expression. And the best way that I can explain this is picture somebody playing the guitar. And if you're, let's say, playing a chord on guitar, so every finger on the guitar will actually independently control the pitch and the slide and the volume independently. And that's exactly what MPE is trying to emulate, is that every single note has pitch data, slide data, pressure data, and these new modes of MIDI expression. All right, so I won't go super deep into MPE right now. I will do a whole other video focused on that solely, but I just want to show you some of the motions that come with MPE. So I have an MPE controller right here, which is the Roly Songmakers kit. And this is actually only going to work with MPE enabled sounds and with an MPE controller. But I have an MPE sound loaded up now, and basically if I press on a note and apply more or less pressure, you'll hear the difference that makes in the sound, and that's an MPE control, the amount of pressure. So that's when I'm pushing hard, and then when I let go. Right, like increases the LFO rate. Another MPE motion is you can slide up. So that sounds like it adds in another LFO. And you can also slide up 2 different notes. And you can do any combination of all these motions together to start getting really expressive performances. So real quick, how to set up MPE in Ableton is you're going to need an MPE controller. So the Roly Songmaker kit or the Ableton Push 2 are 2 MPE controllers. But keep in mind the Push 2 can only do certain MPE motions, while the Roly stuff can do all of it. But real quick, you're just going to want to hop into your preferences. So you can hit Command, comma to get there. And you're going to want to go into the Link Tempo MIDI tab. And then you're going to find your MPE enabled MIDI controllers. So either the Ableton Push 2 or the Roly blocks, or something else that's MPE enabled, and you're going to want to make sure that the MPE button here is turned on. So once you have that set up, Ableton actually has in their sounds, if you go in the browser sounds, then MPE sounds has all these MPE enabled presets that you can already start to play around with your MPE controller and take advantage of the extra expression. Also within this update, if we go into instruments, Ableton's wavetable and Ableton sampler are now MPE enabled by default, so you can have a whole other level of expressiveness and mapping capabilities with those 2 instruments. And if you want to dive deeper into mapping your MPE controls to MPE enabled devices in Ableton, such as wavetable or sampler, you can simply go into MIDI effects and drag MPE control in front of an MPE enabled device. So in this case, I have a sampler that just has this pluck loaded. And if you go into the MIDI section of your sampler, you'll see that at the bottom, when I hit my MPE controller, there's the note position, slide, and the press MIDI information that's coming in. And if I map, let's say, the press to the pitch, and I turn this up, now the harder I press it, the pitch will change. All right, so the next thing is updates to the clip view. So if you find any clip in your session and you double click on it, it will open this clip view. So I'm gonna start with my little drum loop here. And in the clip view, you'll notice that a few things have changed. First and foremost, there's these 3 different tabs. One for your MIDI information, the next one for all your envelopes, and then finally a special section for MPE. And you can control all these on a Mac by holding Option 1, 2, and 3 and cycling through these tabs. So you might notice that there's a now new randomize feature, which allows you to randomize MIDI notes, which is super cool and can be handy for something like hi-hats to help you build in variation to your loops and your ideas. And there's also this new velocity range button where you can program a velocity range to change over time for your MIDI performances. So if, for example, I wanted to go to one of these hi-hats and change the velocity range, all I would do is click and drag and affect all of these notes to give them a little bit more velocity range. And I'll do the same thing on this other hi-hat and just give it a little bit more range, a little bit more realness. And if I click this little button down here, you'll see that this new chance editor comes up, and this actually is what will allow you to randomize some of the values. So if I go back to my hi-hat and I change some of the chance, I can change the probability of that hi-hat note being triggered. So if I lower this, it's going to add some variation to my pattern. Super cool and easy way to add variation really quickly to your ideas. All right, next is the expression editor. So for this, I'm going to go back to my sound with MPE controls, and I'm on the third tab of my MIDI clip view. Okay, this third tab. And if you look closely at this tab, there's slide, there's pressure, and there's velocity. So the pressure and slide are unique to MPE, and you can actually pencil this in regardless if you have an MPE controller or not. So I'm going to just solo this sound, and we can see that this pressure data and the slide data has all been recorded into Ableton, and I can go in here and change the values of every single note. So if I open this window up a little bit more, I can click on every individual note and adjust the pressure or adjust the slide. Right? If I zoom in here, you can see this a little better. I can adjust the slide per note. All right, so the next awesome new feature that Ableton has added is the scale plus keys feature. So if we go back to our MIDI clip view, we can actually hit the scale button in the far left corner. And now it will show you the scale that I'm using, which is C Phrygian. And you can choose from all these different keys and all of these different scales. And there's some pretty crazy scales here that I've never heard of. We're gonna stick to Phrygian for now. And what this does, as you notice, is it highlights all of the notes in that scale in our MIDI piano roll. So it's a lot easier to pencil in notes that are all in key. So another awesome feature is you can just hit this scale button right beside the fold button, and it will actually collapse your piano roll to show only the notes inside the scale you're using. This also works bi-directionally with the push. So if I would change the scale on my push, you'll see that it's reflected in the software, and there's some very powerful things you can do interacting with the push and Ableton. Is this next level? I don't know. I think so. And I'm pretty sure that it saves scale information per clip, so you can have some fun with some jazz progressions and various scales in this way. So next is a few updates to the session view, and if you're not familiar with session view, arrangement view in Ableton is very similar to any other DAW, where it's like you have a timeline with all your ideas, but session view is more a series of loops that are triggered together in different scenes, and it's a different way of interacting with your ideas in the DAW. So if I click and play this, this is a scene, and this would be the same scene with the added bass down here. So one big update they made is that if you double click on any of these scenes, which is basically a series of clips playing together, you can double click and open up this context menu, and you'll see that you have tempo control, time signature control, and these follow actions. So you can actually change the tempo and the time signature of various scenes as you trigger them. So for example, this one, scene 3, I've made the tempo 115 instead of 120. So when I go between these two scenes, you'll notice the tempo change. Right? And then go back to 120. So you can do some really fun stuff with tempo changes and time signature changes. If you're inclined to experimental music or prog music or anything of that nature, super fun. So another huge and powerful feature they've added is what is called follow actions. So if I click on this scene and enable this follow actions button, you'll see that I can actually change what this scene does after it's done playing by telling it what to do. So let's go 100% of the time, go to the next scene, and the action time will be 4 bars. So after this plays for 4 bars, it's going to automatically trigger the next scene. And then on this next scene, I could hit follow action and 100% of the time go to, let's say, the previous clip. Okay, so they're going to go back and forth by themselves, and the action time is going to be also 4 bars. So let's give this a go. I'll play the second scene. It should jump to the third and then jump back to the second, back and forth. Right, so the possibilities are limitless for live performance, or if you're like me and you like composing and improvising on a really intricate succession of clips and vibes, it can be super handy for compositional tools and anything under the sun of that nature. Super cool. All right, so the next huge awesome new feature that they added is some updates to the instrument rack. And if you're not familiar with an instrument rack, it's basically a rack that contains instruments and effects, and then you can map various parameters of those instruments or effects to macro knobs and control those macro knobs in real time. So as you can see, I have all these different parameters that I can control of the sound I have loaded. Right, super cool. So the first addition they've made is the addition of 8 new macros. So you can go all the way up to 16 or bring it back down to 8, and you can actually MIDI map this. So in real time, you can change the amount of macros that you have available to you and really manage your workflow in real time. So the next big thing they added in instrument racks is this little button that opens up what are called macro variations. And these are basically presets of macro knob positions. Okay, so you can actually have a lot of fun with this by, let's say, randomizing all of your macro knob positions and then play around with it until you find a preset you like and then save that to a preset. So for example, this is the sound I have now. Let's randomize everything and then name this to, let's say, bright, just for fun. And now I have this as a preset for all of my macro settings. I can go back to my original sound by hitting that, or go here. And as you build out multiple macro variation presets, you can also MIDI map these. You can go up here, hit MIDI, and you can map these preset changes to a MIDI controller and change the sound of one instrument you have in real time and experiment and get a lot of traction out of one single instrument. And as you're creating presets and randomizing value, you can also right click on any of these macros and hit exclude from randomization or exclude from variations. So let's say you wanted all of your variations to have the same volume. Well, you could map out that parameter and then make sure that it is excluded from the macro variations. All right, so the next big feature that they've added is, I'm gonna put it all underneath the umbrella of devices. So first and foremost, when you go to audio effects, you'll notice that all of your audio effects are now organized by categories, which is a very nice touch. All right, so next is they added quite a few new devices. They added hybrid reverb as an effect, spectral resonator as an effect, and spectral time as all new effects that you can use. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive deep into each of those right now. I'm going to make a separate video for each of these devices, but those are new additions. Ableton has also collaborated with Spitfire Audio to give us some new instruments. So we have Brass Quartet by Spitfire Audio, and we also have Upright Piano by Spitfire Audio. These sound amazing, by the way. And then I think that the other one I don't have downloaded yet. So strings. Yes, we have a string quartet by Spitfire Audio. Along with those new devices, they have also updated the UI and interface of many other devices such as Redux, such as Flanger and Phaser, chorus ensemble, collision, corpus, and electric. And for the sake of time, I'll let you check those out. So the next major update they did was add what is called CPU metering. So there's this little button in the bottom right-hand corner that if you click, it shows you the CPU usage of each of your tracks, which is very handy for managing your CPU if you max out your CPU often and understanding which tracks are likely the culprit. So if I hit play here, you can see that these MPE instruments take up a lot of CPU. Additionally, if you click your CPU in the top right-hand corner, you can change the view from average to current and change a few new settings that go more in depth to show you what's going on with your CPU. So next is a few subtle things in our browser. Grooves are now on their own separate tab, and so are templates. So it makes it a lot easier for us to save a bunch of different templates for different workflows and organize ourselves that way. So to save a live set as a template, it's just as easy as going to File and then hitting Save Live Set as Template. And you can also save a live set to be your default live set when you load Ableton by selecting it right here. And finally, I just want to leave you with a few little tiny updates, little tiny workflow updates and hacks that they have baked into Ableton 11 that I want to share with you real quick. So one of those is if you have a track selected and you want to record arm it, you can simply hit C on your keyboard to record arm any track that you've selected super quick. So another tiny feature that they added is if you go into draw mode, so hit B to get into draw mode or simply click this button up here, you can now click and drag multiple notes. So if I click here, I can pencil in multiple notes by clicking and dragging, but you can change this at any time. So hit Command comma to go your preferences and go to record, warp, and launch. And you'll see that if I hit draw mode with pitch lock, if I click that on, now if I go back and click and drag, I can only pencil in one note at a time. And a cool hack by utilizing this feature is select your scale, C Phrygian, fold to your scale, and you can actually just pencil in a bunch of notes that are all in the scale. Easy as that. Another tiny hack that they added is in our MIDI editor, we could always select multiple notes and adjust the notes with our mouse or with our arrow keys and move them around. But now we can actually do that with velocities as well. So you can select velocities and move velocities with your key as well, independently of the notes. All right, so another new feature they added with MIDI editing, which is awesome, is let's say you want to edit two clips at the same time. You can click your bass, let's say, and my drums, unless I want to edit these at the same time. We could do this in Ableton Live 10, but what they've added is this focus button. And if you turn this off, you can actually edit both of these things at the same time in the same view, which is super handy. So if I wanted to edit the bass note, I could move it here, and I could also edit the drums without having to change views, which is just a handy little feature for taking our editing to the next level. And hey, if you're just getting started producing music and are completely overwhelmed by the process, or if you've been at this for a while but are having trouble finishing projects, or if you just want to get a glimpse inside my workflow, I have a free gift for you, which is a 7-step framework to help you take your ideas all the way to a finished master so you can share it with the world. It has a bunch of fun and practical mixing tips, recording tips that I've learned over the years, and it's super handy to have around your studio. So if you're interested, you can grab it in the link below. So that wraps it up for this video. What do you think? Is Ableton 11 worth it? Not so much worth it? Let me know in the comments below what you think of Ableton Live 11. All right, so that wraps it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, give me a like. Hit that subscribe button if you want to get notified every time I upload my weekly video, and let me know what you'd like to see next. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.